YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV, another game of interplanetary I Spy going on here. And this is a real game of I Spy, not just by me, but by certain military people in America in the past. I'm going to get into more of that in a minute. I'm going to be showing you a lot of stuff here in this video, and it may take some time. So I'm not going to rush it. I normally rush my videos a little bit and cram as much content in as I can, but this time I'm not going to rush it quite so much, because there's some complex things to get across here, and there's lots of links and articles and things that you can check out in the description and link straight to and check out yourself. None of this is made up. This is all real. This is all stuff that's happened or is happening now and has been found and has been proposed to have been found in the past as well. So I'm going to link some of these things together and confirm some of the stories and things you may have heard about the CIA Stargate files or the Stargate project. Now, first of all, let me show you this. Now, I was sent this, I've been sent this a few times actually. This is a CIA document which was released in the year 2000, so 20 years ago. And it's CIA RPD 96. Now, this has been floating around the internet for a while, this, and quite a few articles have been written about it. And I've been sent it a number of times by various subscribers and fans of the channel. But I've been doing a bit of digging, and actually it turns out to be really interesting. There's an article here you can check out in the description below. There'll be a link to this. A Martian State of Mind. Did the CIA really astrally project to Mars in 1984? We asked a psychic spy. Now, this is an interesting article, so you may want to check this out. This confirms that I'm not making this up. This has been going around for quite some time, this particular document, and quite a few sites have done reviews of the document and articles about it. So do see the links below. There's also this here. Now let me briefly give you a little snapshot of what this was. Stargate Project was the 1991 codename for a secret US Army unit established in 1978 at Fort Meade, Maryland, by the Defense Intelligence Agency and SRI International to investigate the potential for psychic phenomena in military and domestic intelligence applications. The project and its precursors and sister projects originally went by various code names. There's some different names for it here, until 1991 when they were consolidated and rechristened as Stargate Project. Stargate Project work primarily involved remote viewing, the purported ability to psychically see events, sites, or information from a great distance. Now, this goes into a lot more detail about this, so I'll let you check all this out. I'm not going to go into the really hard detail. I'm just going to give you an overview of some of the details and see if we can match up some of the information that was gleaned from these psychic viewers of Mars. So I'm going to show you a bit of the document here. Okay, the sealed envelope was given to a subject immediately prior to the interview. The envelope was not opened until after the interview. In the envelope was a 3x5 card with the following information: the planet Mars, time of interest approximately 1 million years BC. Interesting. Selected geographic coordinates provided by parties requesting the information were verbally given to the subject during the interview. So they told them the coordinates and what area to look at. And the coordinates are here: 40.89 degrees north by 9.55 degrees west. Now, I wonder if any of you could guess what part of Mars that might be. And I thought, well, let's check it out. So I got the coordinates and I went on Google Mars. What I did is I got those coordinates. I thought, well, I've got a pretty good idea where this is going to end up. And I just tracked the coordinates, and we ended up here. Now, there isn't much to see here, is there? This is it. Within about 50 feet or so, this is the exact spot of those coordinates that were given to that remote viewer by the CIA Stargate project back in the 1980s, okay, in the early 80s. And this is the spot. Now, there's nothing here. Why is there nothing here? Well, there is something here. We are literally just slightly north of the face on Mars. This is just here. So how far away is it? They've given a location right in the middle of the Cydonia region here, And in fact, I've done videos on this many years ago and articles, which you can see on my website, incidentally. If you go to my website, one of my websites here, called ArtAlien.space, there's loads of stuff about Mars here, and there's articles about this, and I'm going to show you one or two little clips of that in a minute. But let's go back to Mars. Now, we're literally only a couple of miles away from the face here. Let's see how far away this is. Let's do it from the edge of the face there, in that corner, to that marker. It's more like 8.5, 9 miles. But that's neither here nor there, really. It doesn't really matter how far away it is, because this whole area was an ancient city underground, and a lot of it was probably above ground at one point before it was destroyed. And also what we have, not only do we have the famous Mars face here, which NASA have done their utmost to destroy all the detailing and remove all the shadows, so it looks a lot less like a face now than it used to. Now, of course, you could do that with any face. If you got a picture of a face of a person, or say a statue, and you took all the contrast out of the image and then messed with it and put colour filters over it and all sorts of other things, you can actually get rid of most of the facial detail purely by messing with the contrast and light settings and the gamma settings in the image, which is basically what they've done here. And they've literally destroyed a lot of this information so that you can't see it in its real light on Google Mars or on Google Earth here, Google Earth Mars, right? But there's also this long strip here. Now, I noticed this many, many years ago when I first started looking on Google Mars and Google Earth, and we have this great big long strip of removed information here, which starts over here, and this is miles and miles long. So there's some kind of structures here which they've never wanted us to see. And of course there's the sort of pyramid-like structures up here. We've got like the D&M pyramid and other things that people like Mike Barra and Richard Hoagland have written about and lectured on for many years. Very interesting stuff. But of course, when you bleach out and process and manipulate the images like NASA have done here, you don't really see a great deal of definition and shape in these things, because what they've done is they've bleached out all the shadows so that it all kind of looks very, very uninteresting and more natural. Okay, so a lot of these structures here have been probably completely removed, if not just completely covered up here, where they've literally stripped all the image information out of here, and there's never been any explanation why this has been done. It goes right over to here and right here, so you can check that out if you just look up the face on Mars, and you can just link to it. I mean, you know, I think you can just type it in the search bar and it will come up. And if you go in close, you know, it's just been completely bastardized and turned to a piece of crap, really. And it doesn't really bear any resemblance to some of the pictures we saw of this taken by the Viking probes back in the 1970s. But of course, this is what probably got the CIA's attention and made them think, well, maybe there is something there and maybe we should look into it. And this was what the Project Stargate was probably all about. It was trying to determine whether these people could actually see if there was evidence of a civilization there. And this person actually does. So I'm just going to scroll down and read you out some of this. This is a bit long-winded, so I'm just going to, it goes into details here. Now what you have is the subject, that's the remote viewer, and someone interviewing them and then asking them questions, and basically asking if there's any life or any signs of structures or anything on the surface. Okay? I'm seeing, it's like a perception of a shadow of people, very tall, thin. It's only a shadow. It's as if they were there and they're not there anymore. Okay? So this is hinting that this person is picking up some sort of information on who was there, or at least trying to. The interviewer says, go back to a period of time where they are there. And the subject says, mumble. It's like I get a lot of static on the line and everything. It's breaking up all the time. Very fragmentary pieces. Just report the raw data. This is the interviewer. Don't try and put things together, just report the raw data. Subject. I just keep seeing very large people. They appear thin and tall, but they're very large, wearing some kind of strange clothes. And it goes into details here about the sort of clothing they're wearing. Okay, and then the subject goes into, takes himself into a cavern, deep inside of a cavern, not a cavern, more like a canyon. And I'm looking up, and the side's steep, of a steep wall, and it seems to go on forever. And there's like a structure with it's like a wall of the canyon itself has been carved. Again, I'm getting a very large structures. No, intricacies, huge sections of smooth stone. So this person is actually trying to look into the structural things around remotely, and is picking up signs of intelligent structures. Yes, it's like a rabbit warren, corners of rooms. They're really huge. I don't feel like I'm standing on it, just really huge. Perception is that the ceiling is very high, walls very wide. So this goes on, and I'm not going to read all this out because it's quite complicated, and trying to read this and putting the pauses in is quite hard. What this Stargate document seems to show is basically that the subject being interviewed here has actually quite clearly found evidence of structures on the surface. Now, whether it's underground or on the surface or both, I think it's a bit of both here. There's a part here that says it's like I could just perceive like a radiating pattern of some kind. It's like some really strange, interesting kind of roads that are dug into valleys, you know, where a road is just a little below the edge. Okay, so there's lots of like interesting snippets of details here, and this is quite a long document. Now this is an interesting part. It says here, the moderator or whatever, all right, go inside one of these and find some activity to tell me about. And the subject says, different chambers, but they're almost stripped of any kind of furnishings or anything. It's like a strictly functional place for sleeping, or that's not a good word. Hibernations, some form. I can't get real raw inputs. A storm, savage storm, and sleeping through storms. So what he's seeing here is what seem to be underground shelters or bunkers where Martians may have stayed when the weather was bad. But do bear in mind also that the winters are very long on Mars. The years are almost double the length of ours. And you get long summers, but you'd also get very long winters as well. So it would seem that it would make sense that you would probably have to hibernate for large parts of the year because of the sheer length of the winter would be about a year on Earth. So that would make sense. So they would have to have some kind of underground dwellings to survive, not only from the radiation that there is now, but I mean, this person is looking back in time about a million years, over a million years, okay? So even then, when there were people living on Mars, living people, different races perhaps, they were having to live underground a lot of the time, it seems. So it seems like there would have been dwellings and cities and perhaps structures on the surface, but in the winter they would have had to have gone underground, and when there was a particularly bad storm or something, they would have to go into hibernation or hide underground in underground facilities and bunkers. And funny enough, some of the things that I've published on my channel do look very much like bunkers. I'm going to show you some of those in a minute. So I'm not going to read all this now. There's loads and loads of interesting little snippets, but you've got to pick yourself through it. And some of it's a bit hard to understand because the person is talking in a sort of, in a real way. Now, obviously, this is not edited. This is being typed out exactly how the person spoke, with all the gaps and mistakes in their vocabulary and stuff like that. So you've got to take that into account. But it's really interesting. So I may take some image clips of this and put them in at the end as well. And if I find any more really interesting stuff as well, I'll clip these out and highlight them for you and put them in at the end of the video, okay? But let's crack on with it because I want to show you some other things. So we got that, we got an article about it here as well, in Slate. So you can read about that. That gives you a sort of rough overview of the thing. We've got the Wikipedia page, which you can get into and check out Project Stargate and the background to it and the history and the build up to it and all the different people that were involved, all the different organisations. It wasn't just the CIA, there were lots of other people getting involved as well. But what was interesting is that it kind of got me to look at the face again on Mars and what it looks like. Let's have a look at it. Now, when you look at it on Google Earth, it doesn't look very interesting or impressive, and it's just basically had all the real shadow bleached out of it, and all the details have been kind of doctored. Okay, so it doesn't really look like a face. Now, some people said it looks a bit like a face. Some people say it doesn't. I don't really care, to be honest. The fact is, if you look at the overall shape of this thing, it's artificial, right? You have almost perfect symmetry left and right and top and bottom here. So this side is very similar to this. It's almost identical. And this side is also almost identical to this side. In fact, you could fold it in half either way and it would fold onto itself almost perfectly. Now, the chances of a natural structure doing that are millions and millions to one. Absolutely unbelievably low. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you think this is a face or not, because the actual structure that the face is supposedly on is artificial. So ignore the face. The face doesn't matter that much. It may to me, it may to you, but it doesn't. The real important thing here is we have a symmetrical, very large structure that is symmetrical on two planes here. From here to here, from here to here, it's symmetrical, and from here to here, okay? You can chop it in half and fold it over, okay? So it's an artificial structure whichever way you look at it. It doesn't matter about the face details. And it may even be the case that this could have been hit by a couple of missiles. There's little craters in it here. For all we know, it could have been shot at by NASA, because that's the sort of dumb thing that military people do. And in fact, it wouldn't be the first time that a very large face has been shot at by military people. I'm not saying NASA did, but there's a possibility they might have done. They may have shot at it from space even, you know, or from a satellite or something like that. Who knows? We don't really know what's been going on up there. There was a war on Mars. There's nuclear fallout up in the atmosphere that's been picked up by various satellites and by rovers and stuff. They worked out the Xenon 129, I think it is, the levels could only be caused by nuclear fallout, by an artificial explosion, not a natural one. Okay, so there we have it. Let me get these images up here, and what I'll show you is the Sphinx, the famous Sphinx face. Now, this was shot in the face as well. Now, this was shot by an artillery officer who was working for Napoleon Bonaparte back in the day, I mean hundreds of years ago, okay? So they used it for target practice. And this is why the face is damaged. This is why the nose is all broken off here and there's lots of damage. This has been restored since, but it's still pretty badly damaged. And in fact, we've got a thing here that shows you kind of what it might have looked like. Yeah, okay. That's pretty good, I suppose. I mean, there's loads of images that people have done and tried to reconstruct the face properly and show what it may have looked like. But it's been recarved so many times, we don't really know what it would have looked like originally. The point is, what I'm trying to point out here is that this has been recarved and damaged. It's been shot at, there's parts of it missing, and that may be the same with the face on Mars. If there was a nuclear war there, it could have been damaged, but NASA may have also damaged it deliberately, either in real life, i.e. by shooting something at it, or they've just damaged the imagery so much that you can't really recognise it. And that's what it looks like to me, because if you look at the early Viking images of the face on Mars, it looks very much like a face, because the images were taken from a bit further away, and also You've got more shadow in the images, more contrast. And when you remove contrast from an image, you get problems then because you don't have any shadows. Now, if you look at this, this is a good example of an image with almost no shadow. Now, this is one of the skulls I found recently, a few months back. And what they do is they process these images with an orange filter, which kind of kills the shadow to a point and makes everything look rather flat. Now, what you have to do, as many of you know already, you have to colour correct the image and then add contrast back in, and then the shadows come back up. And then you can see that this is a skull, okay? And that's what they do with a lot of things. Another good example here, this looks like a rock until you turn it round and then colour correct it and then add the shadow back in and darken the shadows. And then you see what we have is a giant skull here. Is this a representation of one of the people, or the remains of one of the people on Mars that the Stargate project person was seeing? Is that possible? Is it one of these? Now, this skull is huge. This is about 2 foot, as is this one here. These people would have been somewhere between 10 and 20 feet tall. Don't know exactly. They could have been 10, they could have been 15, they could have been 9. I don't know exactly because we don't know the exact morphology of them. They could have been very tall and gangly and skinny, or they could have been very large and tall as well. I'm guessing the former, because when you have less gravity on the surface of a planet like Mars, it's only 1/3 of Earth, so you would be able to have much bigger, larger head, bigger brain. You could support a much greater size on a low gravity planet, because basically the gravity isn't there to pull the weight down and give you terrible back and neck problems like I get on Earth, and many people do. Lots of us down here on Earth would probably benefit greatly. Lots of us disabled people would benefit greatly from a planet where you only have 1/3 gravity. We would be like athletes. So there we are. And incidentally, here's a picture of that. This is the Viking image on the left here, taken in I think 76, 77, I think this was taken. Can't remember the exact date, I think it was 76 actually. Viking 1 image of the face. Now, you can clearly see that you've got that shape, that outer shape, and it's very similar to this. Now, this is an Olmec head on the right, and the Mars face on the left. And I've found many things that look like Olmecs, and also Egyptian statues on the surface. Incidentally, we have here, I've compared it to this thing that I found back in 2013, 7 years ago, and we have this thing, which even has a similar kind of some similar headgear on. Now, this is a similar looking, remains of a similar looking person to this, and even has that sort of hat or helmet on. Okay, very interesting. So if you want to check some of these things out, go to ArtAlien.space. Now, if you're using Google Chrome, you may want to check that your Flash player is enabled, because it may block it, like it does with almost everything these days. Google Chrome is now broken pretty much. But there's lots of other stuff on this site, and I've just added loads of new stuff to it. I've been updating it. And if you're wondering why I haven't done a new video for a while in the last couple of weeks, I've been building websites, and one of them is called pedalclones.com. It's all about guitars and guitar pedals and that kind of thing. So I've been building and updating. I've got 10 websites. I help run 4 Facebook groups as well. I've got 10 websites. I've got 2 channels. It's a lot of work. I work 14 hours a day most days. And now that we're in lockdown because of the plague or whatever it is we have now, I'm working even harder because there's nothing else to do. I can't go out. We're in lockdown here. You are allowed out to exercise in the UK, but over 70s aren't really allowed to go out, or not supposed to go out unless it's absolutely necessary. So I won't be seeing my parents for some time. So that'd be harsh, but you know, I've also been moving house as well at the same time. Now that's not easy in the middle of a lockdown. Okay, so there's been a lot going on recently. So if you've wondered why I haven't been making many new videos in the last couple of weeks, that's why. I've been very busy, but I've moved all my stuff into the house now, so it's all good. And that's pretty much done. There's a lot of stuff to sort out still, but yeah, there we are. But do check this out, ArtAlien.space. And my new one, I'll put a link to as well, is called pedalclones.com. Okay, we've got some other interesting things here. And incidentally, this skull here is one that was found back in, I think, 2013. Looks very similar to some of the ones on Earth. So there seems to be a connection here. So the CIA were obviously interested in finding out whether the face on Mars was any deal or not. Was it a big deal? And the results they got said yes, there were people living there. Now, unfortunately, this project, the Stargate project, didn't focus on what's going on there now, or maybe they have, and they just haven't released the documents. I would imagine they would have done the same remote viewing experiment a number of times over the years, and then moved the date closer and closer to ours to see when and what happened, or when the civilization was likely to have been wiped out on the surface. Okay, so that's what I would have done if I was running the project. I would have started at the present and then worked my way back until I found something, or the other way around. I'd have started from 2 million years ago, then 1 million, then 500,000, and in increments until I got an exact date when the civilization was probably destroyed. Okay, that's how I would have done it, and I'd assume they would have been similar in that thought as well. So let's have a look at some of these things I've got up here anyway. Basically, if you're new to this channel, I've got loads and loads of evidence of these people on Mars, and that's one of them I just showed you briefly. And this is a recent find. This is huge. This is about 2 foot, 1.5 to 2 feet. So the person that owned this skull could have been something like 10 foot tall, or even bigger, possibly 12, possibly 15. I don't know. I don't know the exact size of this skull, but it's over 1.5 feet. Bear in mind that our skulls are a fraction of this size. They're about this big here, less than half the length of this thing. Okay, about 9 inches. This is about 2 feet, so 9 inches would be about here, from the chin to there. So this is huge. It's absolutely massive. So these people on Mars, some of them could have been 15 foot, somewhere between 10 and 18 feet. Who knows? Who knows exactly? That the men could have been much taller, women could have been a bit shorter, like they are on Earth. We have things like this in Gale Crater, which I found recently, which very much looks like a calcified either bird, a bit like an ibis or something, or heron, or some kind of dinosaur. It's got sharp edges to the beak here, which don't look like a normal beak like you would get on say a heron or an ibis. So this looks to me to be some kind of, perhaps some kind of pterosaur, a flying lizard. And of course, which ancient gods did the people of the Olmecs and the Aztecs all worship? It was Quetzalcoatl, or the flying lizard, or the flying serpent. Okay, so we've got links here to, not only do we have links to sort of mythological creatures on Earth, but we have people. There's also this thing. This was found by Sarah Runcie very recently in January. Amazing find. Now this is one of the very, very few, I'd say there's probably only 2 or 3 actual images that have ever been taken on Mars with what look like living people in them. And this is one of the few, okay? And probably the best one. There are others which are very, very vague and very undefined. This is one of the best ones ever, as far as I know. And I've been researching this for many, many years, and I follow all the other channels and all the other people out there that do this type of thing and keep a close eye on what they do. And this is one of the best things you'll ever see. Now, is it a person? Perhaps. Is it a human? Doesn't look particularly human. Does it represent one of these very tall beings? Now, this shot was taken about 40 feet away, and I've zoomed in and cropped the image. So this is quite a long way from the rover, which is why it's kind of blurred out. And the person is kind of poking their head around this rock here. And there's even a bit of motion blur in the image there where they've moved their head during the photograph. So they were probably looking more to the right, And as the rover moved its camera around to take another shot, it would have made a little noise like like this. This thing moved its head to look at the rover, or at least look in that general direction, which is why we have this bit of motion blur, probably. Okay, that's my explanation anyway. But that looks like the person may have moved their head during the shot. Okay, that's what happens, depending on the length of the exposure, of course. But you know, if you move your head quickly at the wrong time, it will blur the image. So there's lots of evidence of people on Mars, and I've shown hundreds and hundreds of skulls and statues and all sorts of remains on the surface. Some of them look really quite comical, like this one looks a bit like Homer Simpson. But there's actually some kind of ape-like person, or proto-human, I would say. There's lots of apes and bears and all sorts of strange creatures. There's lots of carvings. There's even reptilian type carvings like this one. You may not have seen this. So the links to the flying serpent may be quite considerable when it comes to the face on Mars and the similarity between the Olmec faces and carvings of heads and the face on Mars, and also some of these people on Mars. They may have been reptoids or reptilian. Okay. There were birds, obviously. I've shown birds before. This is probably the clearest one ever spotted. An ibis type here and an eagle type here. Okay, a hawk of some sort, and a smaller one here. This isn't in scale. This one on the right is way smaller than these two. These are quite large. Okay, but you can see all these on my channel. If you've not been here before, there's tons and tons of evidence of not only animals but humanoids, people, all different types of people as well. Some very small, some very, very large. Okay, and there's weird carvings and skulls and remains of buildings and stuff all over the place. There are huge structures up on the mountainside. This is in Gale Crater. There's a pyramid up there with a perfect point to it. It's just over to the left of this one here. There's even steps down here on the ground in this area at the bottom of Mount Sharp. There's ruined structures all over the place. There's another view of it here that gives you a better aspect of it. This thing is something like 400 feet high. This is about the size of the thing at Giza, the largest pyramid at Giza. This is massive. Now, it may not be a perfect pyramid now, but it may have been a very complex ziggurat type structure initially when it was built. In other words, it's more complex than a straightforward pyramid with multiple layers and different parts to it, okay? More like some of the structures you may see in ancient Iraq and places like that. So it is possible that some of these things are very, very similar to the ones that we have on Earth, because basically we have a culture of what look like humans on Mars, as well as different types of humanoids. Some look more reptilian, some look more like kind of insectoid types, you know, like the greys or whatever. There's all sorts, and there's all these thousands and millions of shiny domes up in the northern regions of Mars, in the melt zone between the warmer parts of Mars and the North Pole. This is on the edge of the North Polar region, and this would melt every summer, revealing all these metal structures. There's millions of them, and they're all about exactly the same size. Now, what the hell are they? These are not natural, okay? So there is evidence that there are buildings, there are people, there are statues, there's debris all over the place, ruins everywhere, in Gale Crater especially. But in some other parts of Mars, we have all these sort of things. And you can measure these on Google Earth, and they're all approximately 400 foot across. Let me show you on here, whilst I'm on Google Earth, and I'll show you some of those now. Okay. So we're going up to the northern polar regions here. And these formations are all over the place, okay? Now some of them look like they've been covered in growth of some sort, okay? But don't be fooled, because if you look further around the North Pole, you'll see that a lot of these are actually metal. So they're like metal dome houses, okay? And there's millions of them. A lot of them are in clusters. There's some here, these are in smaller clusters, but in some other areas, they're in massive, massive huge clusters, okay, by the tens of thousands, like this here. These are better, these ones here, look. And some of them are very shiny and reflective, see, look? They look like a load of kind of parked vehicles, but they're not. Some people have said they look a bit like herds of animals. In some areas they do, but they're not. These are buildings, look at this line here. Now, they're kind of randomly spaced, almost like people camping. When you look at people camping on a campsite, you see all these kind of spaces between the objects. I'm not saying these are people camping, I'm just saying the way they're spaced is like a load of vehicles parked. But there's millions of these. Now, you can't tell me that all these shiny domes are natural. There's nobody on Earth that can tell me these are natural or come up with any explanation for these. NASA don't even talk about it. The people in the press don't talk about it. We've been seeing these in these images now for donkey's years now. Yet they're ignored. And meanwhile, starting back in the sort of 1980s, we have the CIA getting people to remote view Mars to find out when the people died. I wonder if they bothered actually to look at this area here, up in the North Polar regions here, because there's millions of these metal domes. And let's go in a bit closer actually. There's millions of them. Now some of them look like they have a bit of sand or stuff blown up against them, and they've got like long drifts of sand. These ones don't. And then you get some which are really dark like this. But of course some of these images aren't all taken at the same time. They're taken at different times of the year, okay? And these are all kind of smudged out and lower resolution here. This is what a lot of them look like. But this is taken from a satellite image at a different time of year and at a lower resolution. So there's not very much detail, and all you can see is these dots, okay? So that's probably taken with a different camera on a different satellite. Yet these over here are clear and shiny, taken probably in the summer, when a lot of this is all melted back and there isn't much distortion in the image. They're not brilliant, but you can see some pretty good detail on these, okay? So what you've got to bear in mind when you look at Google Mars, or Mars on Google Earth, what you've got to bear in mind is that some of these images are taken at different times of the year. So we have all this smudged out stuff here, and we've got this really crappy stuff over here. But these continue, they go right through here, but this is all blotted out. This is from a much older photograph, lower res photograph. Then we come back to the better quality photograph here, and they've put that on the surface for us to look at, and you can see more detail. But this may also have been taken at a slightly different time of year, so they're very dark. So you've got to bear in mind that the reason why we see all these different patches and things that don't match up on the surface is because these images are all taken at very different times by possibly using different cameras, different satellites, many years apart, okay? And then the images have all been stitched together quite roughly on this globe for us to look at. And during that period, of course, what they would have done initially, especially with the giant face, is they've updated the image with a better quality image, but what they've done is doctored the image so that you can't see that it looks like a face. There it is. But, as I said right at the beginning of the video, this is an artificial structure, regardless of whether this is a face or not. That's the important thing to remember here. This is not a normal, natural mountain. We've got the Sphinx. It's had its face shot off by a lieutenant in Napoleon's army, in the artillery, okay? An artillery lieutenant used it for target practice. Has the one on Mars been shot as well? It looks like it has. I think a nuke probably went off very close to it, which is why it's partially destroyed on one side, where it was blasted by a nuclear blast, okay? Now, was that recent? Probably not. It was probably millions of years ago. So there was a nuclear war on Mars, but obviously the CIA wanted to know what was going on Mars, and they wanted to find out when these people died out and what they were up to. And there's some very tantalizing details in here about how they were probably hiding underground in big underground bunker type facilities, trying to hide not only from the storms, but possibly from a war, and also from the very harsh winter conditions, okay? That's probably what we're looking at here. Very interesting. So we can confirm that these CIA remote viewers from back in the 1980s were probably telling the truth, because I have tons and tons and tons of evidence that backs it up. I even have pictures of what look like bunker structures. Let me try and find some of them for you now. We have structures like this. Now, adjust your eyes, because this is a bit out of focus. Let me go back a bit. This is a bunker. And this is an entrance to an underground bunker. Now, this is not in Gale Crater. This is on the edge of Victoria Crater, I think. This was photographed by the Opportunity rover years ago. The Opportunity's been dead now for a while. But this was photographed years back. And this is a bunker entrance on the edge of Victoria. I think it's Victoria Crater. I may be wrong there. Don't quote me on that. This is the little entrance here. You could go in there. There's even got a window. Now it looks like it's been concreted up from the inside, perhaps boarded up or concreted up. There's no footprints or anything. No one's been in and out of here for a very long time. Okay, so we got structures all over the place. We got this thing up on the mountain, which I spotted years ago, which looks like a fortified house here. Massive. This is like about 400 feet from here to here. It's huge. These are massive, massive structures, but they look small because they're a long way off. You know, there's that bunker again. This is a better image actually. You can see it in context, and you've got like a ruin next to it as well with square parts to it. There it is, the raw image. There we are. I mean, this wasn't spotted by me. I think this was spotted by Martin Graney, so credit to Martin Graney for that. Amazing find, this one. Absolutely incredible. So this is probably where they were living. They would dig into the side of a crater and then tunnel down to give them protection against not only the weather and radiation, but perhaps devastating wars on the surface, okay? And some of them look like they kind of want to blend in with the surroundings like this. But these are structures, and what they were doing, they were building into mounds and building into the side of craters to hide. They didn't want to build, in the latter stages I would say anyway, they didn't want to build on the surface. And if they did build on the surface, they were building low, strong, ballistically strong shaped buildings like this. Domes and pyramid shapes which can deflect not only bad weather but also explosions and other things on the surface, like bunkers. Okay? They were a bunker culture. And in the latter stages, I imagine most of them would have lived underground, the survivors of any cataclysm or war. Anyone that was left would have been underground and would have had huge underground cities or towns even below these things. These are just entrances, okay? A lot of these things. So we're only seeing the very surface evidence, and there'd be much, much more to see underground. And this may be why the new rover is going to be taking ground penetrating radar and all that, and that kind of thing to see what's underground. What the military in America have been doing is gathering this information, and they may have even sent people, and people may have been there for many years looking into these things, but we're simply not told about it. And it may explain where all the missing trillions of dollars have gone in America from the public purse. Trillions of dollars have gone missing, and I suspect much of it may have been spent on sending people to Mars to actually get feet on the ground and investigate some of these structures, and we have not been told about it. Every now and again we get a glimpse into somebody or something that captures the imagination and makes you think, wow, there's people still living underground. And that's the reason why they're albino, like this one, because they don't get much sunlight. They've become an albino race, perhaps. There are probably a few people living underground. There could be millions, we don't know. Those domes in the northern melt zones could have millions of people living there for all we know. We just don't know. We just don't know. So, thanks for watching, everybody. Clips coming up now. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my new website, pedalclones.com, and also go to ArtAlien.space to see those articles. I'll put some links below to those anyway. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you're all safe out there from the deadly plague that's attacking. All I can say really is keep safe and maintain your intervals. To use a military expression, maintain your intervals. Keep away a distance about 2 meters from anybody, unless they're your own family, okay? Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.